What's up, everyone? Welcome to the May 16th edition of FanDuel Tournament Plays presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ChipMyMoneyDFS. And as a reminder, you get 1 free month of Awesemo plus Platinum when you sign up and make a deposit at Prize Picks. Be sure to use the code Awesemo to receive a 100% first deposit bonus up to $100. Tonight, we have an 11-game MLB slate. As usual, we're going to take a look at 3 of the top tournament stacks, 3 of the top tournament pitchers on FanDuel, using the top stacks and top pitchers tool on the Awesemo.com website. Starting with the top 3 tournament stacks. Number 3, the Chicago Cubs are taking on Bryce Wilson tonight. They have a 4.9 implied run total against Wilson. They're projected for about a 5% chance of being the top scoring stack, about 6% projected ownership, but they also have a 9% chance of being the top value stack. They're pretty inexpensive, makes it a little bit easier to get them into lineups, and then you can pay up for other very strong pieces and differentiate a little bit elsewhere. So even though they're projected to go a little bit over-owned in terms of top stack percentage, their value percentage does push them up the list a little bit. So far this year, Wilson has only struck out 20.4% of hitters. He has a 4.21 xFIP. The Cubs have been a weak offense and probably will continue to be so. 92 WRC plus, only a 129 ISO. Kind of a situation where if you watch the DraftKings tournament video, there's a lot of situations where it's good pitchers versus good hitters. Here it's bad hitters versus bad pitching, but a good value stack and a stack that's not too popular. So still like getting to them in tournaments. Number 2, Houston Astros taking on Garrett Whitlock tonight. They have a 4.9 implied run total. They're projected for 3% aggregate ownership with a 5% chance of being the top stack. They are relatively expensive with only a 3% chance of being the top value stack. And Whitlock has been a very good pitcher this year. In 4 games started, he has a 36.5% strikeout percentage. He only has a 2.6 xFIP. Overall this year, he struck out about 34.5% of hitters, has about a 2.6 xFIP. He's been really good, but so have the Astros. They have a 116 WRC plus, a 179 ISO so far this year. And whenever a team with that much power, that much upside is not getting much ownership, I'm always interested in going to them, even in difficult matchups. And number 1, the Chicago White Sox are taking on Brad Keller tonight. The White Sox have a 5-run implied total, 6% chance of being the top stack, 3% projected ownership, 6% chance of being the top value. So there are some decent value pieces in this lineup as well. They have struggled this year with a 90 WRC plus and a 126 ISO, but Keller does pitch to contact. He only has a 15.5% strikeout percentage, typically does a pretty good job of keeping the ball on the ground, and does have a respectable 3.94 xFIP. But when you look at this White Sox lineup, it's hard to think that they continue to be this bad going forward. You have Tim Anderson, Yohan Moncada, Jose Abreu, Luis Robert, Yasmani Grandal, AJ Pollock, guys with pretty long track records of being solid major league hitters and having plenty of power. So it is a team that I expect to bounce back as we get further into the season. And going up against a pitcher like Keller, who doesn't miss a lot of bats, I like the upside that comes with these guys being able to put the ball in play. Now, looking at the top 3 tournament pitchers, number 3, Garrett Whitlock, taking on that Houston team that I mentioned in the top stack section. There's not much ownership going to the Houston stack, but there's also not much ownership coming into Whitlock. Currently projected for about 1% ownership with a 5% chance of being the top scoring pitcher, about a 4% chance of being the best value option at $8,000. I mentioned the strikeout percentage before, but a 36.5% strikeout percentage as a starter, a 34.5% strikeout percentage overall this year. That's a lot of upside to not be pulling any ownership, even given that it's a very difficult matchup against Houston. Number 2, Brad Keller taking on those White Sox. Kind of the same thing as Whitlock, except for instead of being a really high upside pitcher facing a really good offense, he's a lower upside pitcher facing an offense that has struggled this year. Keller's only projected for about 1% ownership. He has a 6% chance of being the top scoring pitcher, about a 3% chance of being the top value at $9,200. The strikeout percentage, as I mentioned before, certainly underwhelming at 15.5%, but he does typically do a pretty good job of keeping the ball on the ground and has a 3.94 xFIP this year, going up against a White Sox team that really has not been clicking at the plate so far. And number 1, Noah Syndergaard, $9,900 price tag. So pretty expensive here, facing the Texas Rangers, who have struggled offensively with an 88 WRC plus and a 21.6% strikeout percentage so far this season. It's hard to give Syndergaard a major endorsement here because his strikeout percentage this year is only 17.5%. His fastball velocity is down 3 miles per hour off of his career average. And that's a big concern because we know he's dealt with a bunch of injuries over the last couple of seasons. So it's hard to say that I'm really confident in Syndergaard, and I'm certainly not excited to pay $9,900 for him, but he is facing an offense that has struggled. He has had good results so far and has a 3.97 xFIP. So maybe you see the strikeout numbers start to come up a little bit. Maybe you see Syndergaard start to get shelled. I'm not really sure which one. But right now he's projected for 1% ownership, a 7% chance of being the top pitcher, only 2% chance of being the top value because he is so expensive. But that price tag is keeping his ownership down. So to recap, the top 3 tournament stacks on tonight's slate: number 3, the Chicago Cubs; number 2, the Houston Astros; and number 1, the Chicago White Sox. And the top 3 tournament pitchers: number 3, Garrett Whitlock; number 2, Brad Keller, and number 1, Noah Syndergaard.